For years, boaters have been saying the same thing. In forums, at marinas, around kitchen tables. The prices are too high, the motors cost more than cars, and everyday families are being pushed off the water. Nobody listened until now. Because buried inside Mercury's latest financial reports is something the marine industry never wanted to admit. A truth that changes everything we thought we knew about boating's future. And once you see the numbers, you'll understand why millions of Americans are watching their dream of owning a boat drift further and further away. Have you felt it too? That moment when you looked at the price tag and wondered who these boats are even made for anymore. Drop your story in the comments. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And share this with every boater who deserves to know the truth. Because what Mercury just confirmed will make you see this industry in a whole new light. To understand what Mercury's 2025 reports really mean, you first have to understand what Mercury Marine became and how it got there. Headquartered in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, Mercury Marine grew into the largest recreational marine propulsion manufacturer on the planet. A division of Brunswick Corporation, it didn't just make outboard motors, it dominated them. By 2024, 1 out of every 2 powerboats sold in the United States carried a Mercury engine on its transom. At boat shows from Miami to Dubai to Venice, Mercury regularly commanded 60 to 80% of the outboards on display. No competitor came close. The company invested more than $1.5 billion in research and development since 2008, and in February 2021, that investment produced something unprecedented. The V12 Verado, 600 horsepower, a naturally aspirated 7.6-liter powerhead. The marine industry's first V12 outboard engine. It featured a 2-speed automatic transmission, a steerable gear case, and contra-rotating propellers. Mercury called it a revolution. And for a while, it was. Luxury boat builders lined up for allocations. Dealers couldn't keep the premium Verados in stock. At a manufacturer's suggested retail price exceeding $80,000 per engine, this wasn't a product for weekend anglers. It was a statement, a symbol of what the marine industry had become. And Mercury wasn't slowing down. At the 2025 Fort Lauderdale International Boat Show, the company achieved a record 61% share of all outboards on display. In the on-water segment, that number climbed to 76%. At Dusseldorf, Toronto, Dubai, and Venice, Mercury set new records again and again. Market share kept climbing. Headlines kept celebrating. The company launched new V8 and V10 platforms, electric Avatar outboards, and autonomous docking systems. Innovation after innovation. From the outside, Mercury Marine looked unstoppable. The press releases painted a picture of relentless momentum, of an industry leader pulling further ahead while competitors scrambled to keep up. But inside the homes of American boaters, a very different story was unfolding. One that had nothing to do with horsepower or market share, and everything to do with price tags that no longer made sense. While Mercury celebrated record market share at international boat shows, something else was happening on the ground. The disconnect between industry headlines and consumer reality had never been wider. In January 2020, the National Marine Manufacturers Association released its data. Total new powerboat retail sales had fallen 8.2% year over year. Families weren't buying. First-time boaters were staying home. And the segment hit hardest was what the industry calls the value category. Everyday boats for everyday people. But the boating community already knew. They had been talking about it for years. On forums like The Hull Truth and iBoats, the conversations followed a familiar pattern. One boater wrote that he couldn't figure out why a new outboard cost more than a decent car. Another pointed out that a new 150 horsepower Mercury runs over $11,000. For that price, you could buy reliable transportation with 4 wheels. The frustration wasn't new, but it was growing louder. The math had stopped working for middle-class families. Average boat loan interest rates climbed from 4.5% in 2022 to nearly 7.8% by 2025. The Federal Reserve held rates steady at 4.3%. Inflation pushed new boat prices up another 4% due to tariffs and supply chain pressures. A boat that cost $30,000 in 2019 now carried a price tag north of $50,000. And the motors to power it? Those had climbed even faster. Consumer confidence hovered around 98 on the index. Consumer sentiment sat at 64.7. These weren't recession numbers, but they weren't spending numbers either. Americans had money, they just weren't spending it on boats. Dealers noticed first. Orders slowed. Showroom traffic dropped. The phrase that kept appearing in industry reports was cautious wholesale ordering patterns. When dealers stop ordering inventory, it's not pessimism, it's a survival instinct. And then the quarterly filings arrived. Not the press releases, not the boat show announcements, the documents filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission. And for the first time, Brunswick Corporation used words that validated what boaters had been feeling all along. The language was careful. Corporate, designed for investors, not consumers. But the meaning was unmistakable. In its second quarter 2025 earnings report, Brunswick Corporation acknowledged continued challenging consumer demand market conditions. The boat segment reported a 7% decrease in sales. The value category was underperforming initial expectations. Translation: the families who built the boating industry were no longer buying boats. The numbers told a brutal story. In the fourth quarter of 2024, boat sales had fallen 18% compared to the previous year. The propulsion segment dropped 24%. By the first quarter of 2025, the boat segment was down 13% year over year. Dealers weren't ordering. Consumers weren't financing. And the entry-level market had all but stalled. Then came the downgrade. In August 2025, Moody's Ratings lowered Brunswick's senior unsecured notes from Baa2 to Baa3. The rating agency cited ongoing challenges expected to prevent improvement in credit metrics over the next year. Brunswick's debt-to-EBITDA ratio sat at approximately 3.75 times. Moody's noted that the company continued share repurchases during a period of earnings weakness, calling the decision aggressive, and tariffs made everything worse. In April 2025, sweeping new import duties hit the marine industry. Rates ranged from 10 to 145% depending on the country of origin. Aluminum, stainless steel, electronics, resin, engine components, all affected. Brunswick estimated $20 to $30 million in direct tariff expenses at current rates. Manufacturers responded with price increases. New boats got more expensive, and buyers who were already hesitant stepped back entirely. The human cost spread across the industry. Dealers sat on unsold inventory, watching interest accumulate. Mechanics stayed busy because owners chose repairs over replacements. First-time buyers migrated to the used market or abandoned their boating dreams altogether. At the shows, Mercury's engines gleamed under exhibition lights, but across America, aging outboards sat under tarps in backyards and garages. Replacing them cost more than many families earned in a month. The boats that once symbolized weekend freedom now represented a widening divide between those who could afford the water and those who could only remember it. The question that remains is simple. Why? How did the world's most successful marine propulsion company find itself confirming what frustrated boaters had suspected for years? The answer begins with a boom that couldn't last. During the pandemic years of 2020 and 2021, boating exploded. Families sought outdoor recreation. Social distancing made boats attractive. Dealers sold inventory faster than manufacturers could produce it. Waitlists stretched for months. Prices climbed because demand overwhelmed supply. The industry celebrated record years, but pandemic demand was borrowed. Families who might have bought boats in 2023 or 2024 bought them in 2020 and 2021 instead. When the world reopened, the surge ended. By 2024, the industry faced a classic correction. Overproduction met underbuying, and the customers who remained found a marketplace that had fundamentally changed. Prices never came back down. A new outboard motor now costs roughly $100 per horsepower or more. A 350 horsepower engine carries a price tag exceeding $35,000. The V12 Verado commands more than $80,000. Boats that qualified as entry-level a decade ago now sit firmly in luxury territory. The industry priced its growth customers out of the market. Financing made it worse. With the federal funds rate holding at 4.3% and boat loan rates approaching 8%, monthly payments became prohibitive. Financing a $40,000 boat with a $25,000 motor meant payments rivaling a mortgage. Except the boat depreciates the moment it touches water. And here lies the paradox of Mercury's success. The company gained over 300 basis points of market share in the high horsepower category. It dominated every boat show. It launched breakthrough technologies. But total industry volume shrank beneath it. Analysts noted that Brunswick didn't fail at engineering. It succeeded at dominating a shrinking pond. Mercury built the best motors in the world for customers who could still afford them. The problem was that fewer customers could. Market share measures dominance. It doesn't measure health, and the marine industry's health was quietly deteriorating while the victory laps continued. Brunswick Corporation is not standing still. The company sees the numbers. It understands the shift, and it is responding. For the 2026 model year, Brunswick announced plans to rationalize its value fiberglass boat lineup by 25%. Fewer models, less complexity. A recognition that the entry-level market requires a different approach. The company is also accelerating efforts to onshore its supply chain, reducing exposure to tariffs and international disruptions. But perhaps the most telling investment is Freedom Boat Club. The shared ownership model now contributes approximately 12% of Brunswick's boat segment revenue. Younger buyers, more diverse customers, people who want the boating experience without the burden of full ownership. It's a tacit admission that traditional boat sales may never return to what they were. Mercury continues launching new technology. The Simrad AutoCaptain autonomous docking system debuted in late 2025, designed to make boat handling easier for inexperienced operators. The Avator electric outboard line targets environmentally conscious consumers. These are products for a future customer base. Whether that base materializes remains uncertain. The marine industry now faces a question it cannot avoid. Can it rebuild trust with the buyers it left behind? Can it create pathways back to the water for families who watched prices climb beyond reach? Or has a line been crossed, where the dream of owning a boat now belongs only to those who never had to dream about it at all? Mercury's 2025 reports did not reveal a scandal. They did not expose a defect or a cover-up. What they confirmed was something quieter and perhaps more consequential. The acknowledgement that consumer demand had weakened, that everyday buyers were stepping away, that the value segment was underperforming. For years, boaters said the industry had lost touch with them. Forums filled with complaints about pricing. Marinas buzzed with frustration. And finally, in the carefully measured language of quarterly filings, Mercury's parent company confirmed what the water already knew. The tide is shifting. Innovation remains boating's promise, but somewhere along the way, progress became something you could only afford, not something you could aspire to. And that may be the hardest truth of all.